Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything Podcast. I am your host, Chuck Manity. And in today's episode, we are going to be covering Love, Death and Robots Season 2, Episode 3, called Pop Squad. This aired on May 14th, 2021 and has a runtime of 18 minutes. This one got a very good score on IMDb, scoring 8.1 out of 10 with 14,000 reviews. So, the synopsis is, in a future where resources are controlled by the rich, unregistered offspring are forbidden by the state. The police officer charged with enforcing population control faces a crisis of conscience. So the directors are Frank Balson and Jennifer Hugh Nelson. The writers are Paolo Bacigalupi, Philip Gillette and Tim Miller. The voice artists are Nolan North as Detective Briggs, Elodie Young as Alice, Emily O'Brien as Eve, Michelle C. Bonilla as Officer Pentley, and Dendry Taylor as Ruth, and Deborah Cardona as Maria. So those are the important voices and then the sort of side characters are Ike Amadi as Officer Mantis, Bashir Dalal as Officer Suran, Andrew Hawkes as the father, and Jennifer Hale as proprietor. So yes, that is basically the cast for this one. And the Ipswich Collectibles, just so you guys know, as I was watching through the reviews, I actually caught it on a show called The Drowned Giant. That's where that huge giant is on the beach that gets beached, that drowned, and it's in a future episode that I'll be doing on Love, Death and Robots. But you actually see another shop called the Ipswich Collectibles, which is quite interesting. Anyway, but let me stop rambling and let's get straight into the review. So it opens up with the Netflix logo followed by the title sequence. It opens up with a shot where you see towards the sky and it gives you an indication of how tall these buildings actually are. Very dingy looking, it's raining, it's not a very happy setting, and as it scales down through to the top of the building, it gives you the idea of how big these buildings are. Very futuristic setting, but when I say futuristic, as in the future that, or this part of the city at least, and you'll see later on the screen, is this part of the city is very dilapidated. And then you see two flying cars, and these are police vehicles. Detective Briggs makes his way into the quote-unquote crime scene, which in my opinion is not. That's why this episode gets me a little bit, is because it's almost like the people that are wanting to live forever and long are super self-centered. It's very much a vanity project of theirs. And I think the way they're looking at justifying it, that if they don't let people have children, then they won't have a situation where the place is overpopulated. So it's just it's just completely unnatural to live forever. Firstly, it makes you not appreciative of life. I think your way that you look at things will change very dramatically, and it's not that they can't be killed. It's just that they keep taking the serum to live forever, and the way that they look at kids or children is almost like expendable completely. So as Detective Briggs makes his way in, they scan his eyes, and he makes his way into the, like I said, quote-unquote crime scene. And they're asking this lady how long she's been staying there, if the landlord is even aware that she is there, and it looks like they're trying to figure out whether or not she is keeping a child there with her. As they are taking the lady that they're interrogating out, all that she's screaming is, they are just children, we're just trying to live, and they haven't even had breakfast. So it shows the caring side of the people that are having families and so on, and the other guys, the policemen, are just ragtagging her, like just pulling her out. You can see there's zero care, and Detective Briggs is left to deal with the children. So Officer Briggs is the only person in the room with the two children, and all he has to say to them is, sorry kids, while looking at this kid's really cute face. He then disposes of them, let's just say that. So he kills them. As soon as the gun is fired, it swaps immediately to a scene where you see a police car flying out of the dingy city, and that is Officer Briggs making his way away from the scene. He then has like a futuristic, like iPad type thing, which has a picture of the little boy that he's just gotten rid of, and he turns it around because you can see he's not feeling good about what he did. As he makes his way through the clouds, you see the sun shining, and then there's a very beautiful looking futuristic city where the rich are now staying, so he's making his way to there. You get sort of overhead shots of the city, and you start hearing some sort of opera singing, and that then goes swaps over to the scene where you actually see the singer making her way with a red dress down the stairs, busy singing to a crowd of rich people. And if you're wondering why I said rich people, it's not a derogatory thing. There's nothing wrong with being rich. Be rich. But these people have obviously put in that law into the state with the unregistered children and that kind of stuff, and this is why I'm kind of saying it in like that kind of way, I guess. But you can tell they're rich with the attire that they're wearing, the jewelry, the hairstyles, the ball, the fanciness, and everything that's surrounding it. So it's pretty obvious who they are. So as soon as Alice, that's the lady in red that was busy singing, she makes her way out onto the balcony, and that's where Detective Briggs, where Detective Briggs is busy having champagne. She makes mention of the song and also throws a lot of shade at what her and Officer Briggs calls the breeders, because she asked him how the thing went, and he said, yeah, typical, whole bunch of crazies. And she asked why would they want to give up all of this. So it's quite weird that she says that, because they're not really staying in the same high and mighty society that they're staying in. So it's not really, they're not giving up anything actually at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much the start of the convo. So as the conversation continues, Alice then says, or asks Detective Briggs, if he can take her to her boost, which is basically when they get the serum put inside them to keep them young or make them younger. He says sure, and he basically poses the question, or not poses, he makes a statement saying that if they weren't able to live forever, he'd marry her. And then she said, well, if they weren't able to live forever, she would let him make her pregnant. And his jaw just drops. It's kind of like you can see that he'd be very, very up for that, because it looks like he really likes this Alice girl quite a bit. And then she laughs it off, going, oh, I'm just kidding, that could never happen, kind of thing. Someone from the party comes and takes Alice away to kind of get berated by all the people that are inside the ballroom, and Detective Briggs is left behind, and he notices that he still has blood on his hands from the execution that happened earlier, and you can see he's horrified, and his face is absolutely horrified. So just a little setup and clawback payoff thing. When the execution did happen, the child was holding a little green dinosaur, and the memories are sort of popping back into his head of what he did a little bit earlier that afternoon, and he's not super happy about it. And at the same time, the memories are coming in, flooding his head and horrifying him. At the same time, Alice is being berated by the people in the ballroom, like I said, and these two coincide. That they're talking about her song that she sang being like a song for like dinosaurs, and she actually holds up a dinosaur, a little toy dinosaur that looks exactly the same as the one the kid was holding in his hand. So at this point, Alice asks if he's okay, and as he says yeah, he's at the place where she's getting boosted, so it swaps scenes completely. So all of these three sort of amalgamate very cleverly. Alice gets her boost then afterwards, and you can see they do a very close shot of her face, and you can see all the blemishes and imperfections completely disappearing. Her eyes kind of look like they're shining again. She's completely rejuvenated. After her boost, and they are flying in their flying car, she tries to make a pass at him, and he brushes her off, saying he's not in the mood, and the little dinosaur that she had is in the back of the vehicle, which I think he might have caught a glimpse of. And all of this is starting to really weigh heavy on his heart. So straight after the flying car scene, it goes back. Detective Briggs is busy with the next case. Him and Officer, I think I called her Pentley in the beginning, it's Pencil, sorry. So Officer Pencil and him are she's doing most of the talking as they walk out of the building, and she goes, it, referring to the kids, it was crying and it was making a noise, and this thing, who can deal with that? And so they're very, very much anti-children and families and all of that, the officers that are working with us. Immediately the conversation is interrupted by a father that's being detained by two officers. He stops and calls Detective Briggs a baby killer. Or actually, he called him a child killer, I beg your pardon. I can tell you now that it's both are true at this point. So there's a wrestle that happens between the father and the two officers. He manages to get hold of their guns, or a gun from them. He points it straight at Detective Briggs' face, and Detective Briggs does not even flinch. He doesn't move, almost suggesting that he wants the guy to shoot him in the face, and doesn't even flinch. As soon as the father fires a shot off, or just before, they shoot him in the head, and the gun goes off and it just skins Detective Briggs' cheek. Officer Pentel then asks if Detective Briggs is okay, and he says absolutely nothing, just looking at the man that has just been murdered in front of him. So most of the scenes with him where he's alone, generally speaking, there's a lot of flashbacks to especially that last case that he did with that little boy, that cute little boy with the dinosaur. So he's busy flying in his cop car. I know that feels weird to say. So he's busy flying in his car, and then he pulls out the dinosaur that was in the back of his car that was left there by Alice, and on the label it says Ipswich Collectibles, which I made mention of earlier. And look out for my review on the one with the giant that had drowned on the beach. I will make mention of that that as well in that episode. So he looks at it and then proceeds to make his way to Ipswich Collectibles, which is not in the rich area, in the clouds. It is in the dinges at the bottom, and he does manage to find it. Over there he sees a lady with blonde hair that is busy buying a wooden toy train, and he has a conversation with the lady who owns this shop, saying, oh, well, these are collectibles, and people haven't bought these things on the regular for 200 years, and so on and so forth. So then he eventually follows the lady to her home, and as soon as he's followed her there, he sees that well, she knows by the way he's dressed that he's a police officer. And then the little girl makes her way out, and he knows what he's got to do because that's his job. But this lady's having a conversation with him, telling him how bad he is and all of that sort of stuff. She tries to go for his gun. She doesn't get it. He gets it. He pushes her over the table, and he's got her face down on the table with the gun pointed at her head. She's crying, she's freaking out, the baby's crying, and she said, well, take me, just don't hurt my baby. So eventually he lets her go. She grabs her child, and then her and the child are, she's busy freaking out, all on the ground, just holding her little girl. He makes his way outside, and you can still hear the crying from outside, and he's comes face to face with Officer Pentel. So he's got his gun drawn already. So it's almost like a duel, like from the Western days. And as soon as this duel happens, shots are fired, and you see that Officer Pentel goes down. She's been hit in the neck, and the way that Detective Briggs is walking, you know that he's been hit as well. Detective Briggs then has his head faced towards what looks like a little bit of sunshine coming through the clouds. It's busy raining on his face, and he's just really taking it in and enjoying something that he's probably forgotten about because he's been living for so long. The simplicity of feeling rain on your face, sunshine on your skin, grass between your fingers, those kind of things that, stars in the sky, stuff that we all eventually start taking for granted because it's there. So you can see he's really absorbing this moment, assuming that he knows it's his last. He's been shot, so he knows that he's not going to make it, and he just drops to the ground. After he drops to the ground, you get a scene opposite to the beginning, because it was coming from the buildings on the way down, looking rather dingy, setting up that, this is the bad place. But as soon as he's this sort of arc that's made its way through the story is it's going from where he's fallen, and it goes from the bottom of the buildings to the top. But now it's lit up a little bit, so it's not looking as dingy and grimy. A lot of the buildings have bush and shrub and trees, or forestry growing on it, so it's natural, it's nature, it's those kind of things. And the rain's pouring down, so it's almost like a story arc that's, these people are to be looked down upon, and then at the end it's almost like, no, this is actually to be looked up to. Family and mothers, daughters, sons, brother, sister, all those things, which are very important, which today is not really a message that's pushed mainstream. It's really not. But family is good. Have a family. You will never regret it. But that's why this one is a mixed bag for me. I like the way it ended. So the way it starts kind of got me revved up a little bit. It got me a little bit upset because of what they were doing to the children. I have kids myself, and if something like that was happening to my kids, it would absolutely shatter me. So it's kind of right at home for me. But the way it ended, it's like a redemption arc for this man, Detective Briggs, and the way it played out was very, very satisfying. So I'm glad it got a high score like it did, because the story is really good. So that is that from me. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed my review of it, please do put that in the comments as well. And please don't forget to show us some love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And that is it for today's episode of the Everything Podcast. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.